Sam Altman freaks a bubble suggestion, demands bailout. Are AI companies already too big to fail? Sam Altman and the billion-dollar question. Over the past few weeks, a remarkable conversations unfolded at the intersection of technology, economics, and politics. It started with a simple interview clip of Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, and ended with a debate that touches the very foundation of the global economy. The question everyone's now asking is this: are AI companies already too big to fail? When Sam Altman appeared in a recent interview, his comments sent shockwaves through the tech and finance world. Altman was asked about the scale of the AI industry and whether the US government might play a role in supporting it during times of crisis. His answer was surprisingly frank. At some level, when something gets significantly huge, whether or not they are a paper, the federal government is kind of the insurer or last resort, as we've seen in various financial crises and insurance companies screwing things up.
Some level, when something gets sufficiently huge, whether or not they are on paper, the federal government is kind of the insurer of last resort, as we've seen in various financial crises and insurance companies screwing things up.
To many, this sounded like a quiet acknowledgement that the tech industry, particularly AI, has grown so large, so deeply woven into the structure of the economy, that it can no longer be allowed to fail. This statement wasn't just about technology. It was about power, dependency, and what happens when innovation becomes inseparable from national economic survival. The concern is simple but serious. AI companies may have already crossed the threshold from being innovators to being essential institutions. Nearly every major source of growth in the US economy right now is linked directly or indirectly to AI. From NVIDIA's record-breaking market cap to the explosion of data center construction stretching across the United States, artificial intelligence has become the engine driving both Wall Street optimism and Main Street investment. If AI were to stumble, the shock wouldn't just hit Silicon Valley, it would ripple through the entire economy. The whole American economy is, in essence, one massive bet on AI. Most of the visible construction growth today isn't housing or infrastructure, it's data centers. Entire regions are being transformed into digital power plants, where acres of land and megawatts of electricity are consumed to keep algorithms running. In states like Iowa, Arizona, and Texas, the new industrial revolution isn't about factories, but about server racks. At the same time, nearly all of the growth in the stock market has been concentrated in AI and tech companies. Analysts have begun to warn that the US economy has become dangerously dependent on one sector, a single glowing pillar holding up a vast and fragile ceiling. When you remove the AI narrative, the picture underneath looks far from ordinary. Manufacturing remains sluggish, real wages are flat, the housing crisis continues. But because AI stocks keep climbing, the illusion of prosperity holds. And this is where the danger lies. Instead of developing detailed long-term solutions to deal with issues like housing, healthcare, and education, many policymakers have placed their hopes in AI as a kind of miracle solution, a digital savior that will somehow automate away inefficiency and inequality. It's as if the country's economic strategy has been outsourced to algorithms. Every social and financial problem, from labor shortages to climate change, is being placed in the hands of the same technology giants who stand to profit from the hype. But hope is not a plan. By placing so much faith in a single technology, the US risks neglecting the fundamental pillars of its economy: physical infrastructure, affordable housing, energy independence, and education. The roads, schools, and homes that once defined American progress are now taking a back seat to server farms and GPU clusters. And if the AI bubble bursts, that blind faith could go down in history as one of the greatest miscalculations of modern capitalism. This leads to a critical question. What happens if the AI boom slows down? What if the billions being poured into data centers, chips, and AI infrastructures don't yield the returns investors expect? OpenAI, for instance, has reportedly made trillions in future spending commitments to expand its data centers, despite having only around $13 billion in annual revenue. When pressed about this, Sam Altman responded with characteristic confidence. If you want to sell your shares, I can find you a buyer. I think there's a lot of people who would love to buy OpenAI shares. Revenue is growing steeply, and we are taking a forward bet that it will continue to grow.
A company with $13 billion in revenues make $1.4 trillion of spend commitments, and you've heard the criticism,
First
Sam.
of all, we're doing well more revenue than that. Second of all, Brad, if you want to sell your shares, I'll find you a buyer. I just, enough. People are, I think there's a lot of people who would love to buy OpenAI shares. I don't think you would
including myself. Including myself.
People who talk with a lot of breathless concern about our compute stuff or whatever that would be thrilled to buy shares.
It was a deflection rather than an explanation. For many, it echoed the language of corporate executives from past financial bubbles, those who believed that exponential growth could continue forever. History, of course, has shown otherwise. The AI industry is promising the moon, trillions of spending, world-changing breakthroughs, and endless prosperity. But the pattern feels eerily familiar. The dot-com bubble of the late 1990s, the subprime mortgage crisis of 2008, each time experts assure the public that this time was different, that the growth was real and sustainable. Yet, each time, that illusion was shattered by the same truth. Markets built on unchecked optimism eventually collapse under their own weight. AI has now become a foundational pillar of the US financial system. Nvidia's stock alone represents about 8% of the entire S&P 500 index. That means one company makes up nearly a tenth of the benchmark that defines America's economic health. AI-related firms have contributed to roughly 80% of all market gains over the past year. Without them, the US stock market would likely be flat or even in decline. If investor confidence in AI fades, the consequences could be catastrophic. Pension funds, 401ks, and retirement portfolios, all heavily invested in tech, could take massive hits. The collapse of AI speculation would not just erase trillions of paper wealth, but would also destabilize consumer spending, housing, and employment. After the backlash to his comments, Altman tried to clarify on social media. He wrote, "We do not have or want government guarantees for open AI data centers. Taxpayers should not bail out companies that make bad business decisions. What we do think might make sense is governments building and owning their own AI infrastructure." It was a strategic statement designed to sound responsible while leaving the door open to partnership. Because if governments start building AI infrastructure, national computing reserves, AI research centers, and state-funded cloud systems, private companies will inevitably benefit. The cost would be shared publicly, but the profits would remain private. In other words, a bailout by another name. Altman and others in Silicon Valley have hinted that the total cost of developing next-generation AI systems could run into the trillions. Microsoft, Amazon, and Google are pouring hundreds of billions into expanding their cloud computing operations. Data center spending in the US alone is expected to surpass $250 billion this year. The scale is unprecedented, and much of it's financed through debt. That's where the real risk lies. Corporate borrowing tied to AI has exploded since 2024. If AI-generated profits don't materialize fast enough, companies could find themselves over-leveraged. The same scenario that spawned the 2008 crisis. Once again, speculative euphoria could become systemic vulnerability. Some industry voices insist there will be no federal bailout for AI. But even those same voices admit that if the AI economy collapses, the impact would be devastating. Entire regions now depend on AI-driven investment for growth. Entire pension systems depend on tech stock appreciation to stay solvent. The reality is that AI is no longer just an innovation sector. It's the backbone of the modern US economy. That's what makes it dangerous. Because when a single industry becomes too critical to fail, the government inevitably becomes its safety net. This issue extends far beyond Wall Street. About half of all US consumer spending now comes from the top 10% of earners, most of whom hold the bulk of their wealth in stocks. If the AI market crashes, those portfolios would implode, triggering a collapse in consumer spending. Housing prices would fall, jobs would disappear, and the entire illusion of the economic stability would evaporate almost overnight. This fragile dependence means that even a modest correction in AI stock values could trigger cascading effects across the economy, the kind that forced policymakers into the same impossible choices they faced in 2008. Do nothing and risk collapse, step in and bail out the very institutions that created the risk in the first place. The irony is striking. AI, the technology that was supposed to make systems smarter, more efficient, and more resilient, may end up exposing just how brittle the global economy really is. And that leads to a question few are asking: what do taxpayers get in return? Public money is eventually used to support AI infrastructure. Should the public not also share in the profits? Should AI systems created through government partnerships be required to focus on national priorities, healthcare, education, environmental science, instead of products that maximize private revenue? These are not anti-innovation questions. They're questions about fairness, accountability, and balance. Because the future where AI companies control both the economic and technological levers of society is one where democratic oversight risks becoming obsolete. There's also a deeper cultural issue. AI has become more than a technology. It's become a belief system. A growing number of people now see AI as the inevitable solution to every human problem, from climate change to inequality. This techno-utopian mindset discourages meaningful debate about ethics, responsibility, and long-term risks. It replaces hard work with blind faith. Rather than building real solutions, new housing, stronger education systems, or better public healthcare, many are simply hoping AI will fix everything. It's a dangerous illusion, and one that history has punished time and time again. This isn't just a story about Sam Altman or OpenAI. It's a story about what kind of future we're building. One where innovation is guided by accountability, or one where the pursuit of profit overrides caution until failure becomes inevitable. Because if AI companies are already too big to fail, then the question isn't whether the government will step in to save them, it's when. And by the time that moment arrives, it might already be too late. Thanks for watching this deep dive. If you found this analysis helpful, hit like, comment, and subscribe to Eureka for more breakdowns of the world's biggest stories in tech, finance, and geopolitics. Stay curious, stay informed, and we'll see you in the next one.